let's start off with, first off, I have a book here. This is the horse. It's 30,000 years of horses in art. Basically, what it has is every kind of engraving, portrait, hunting scenes, everything you would imagine, every kind of things. Tapestries, goes from stone paintings to the modern times. A long period of time. I defy you to go find me anywhere in this book or anywhere on this earth a picture, an engraving, anything of a horse being ridden with his head down before the 1800s. And I'll save you a lot of time. You won't find one because it was never done. Something happened in the 1800s that changed the stuff, that changed the whole way of training. But let's go back for a second to what happened before that. So I'm just going to read from a little bit of some of my own notes here. So it starts off, dressage. Some people can take the beginning of dressage back to Xenophon 2,000 years ago, right? But I think for modern dressage, it probably really starts at the Renaissance in northern Italy, where they began really almost teaching horses dance. It happens that ballet, human ballet and horse ballet started at the same time, all right? So starting with the flourishing of the Renaissance some 500 years ago, a consistent lineage of training originated in the schools of Brissone, Pignatelli, Fiaschi, and for those, some of you already know that those posters there have this lineage kind of went off. But that big one back there, we kind of edited all that and made it into that big one. And that gives you a documentation of what I'm talking about here. And also you can cross-reference. So you can look 1750, come across and see the different schools, who was doing what. Anyway, so in Brissone, Pignatelli, Fiaschi, and Northern Italy, noblemen from all over Europe came to these schools to study and return to their native countries. Vargas went to Spain, Pluvinel to France, Belasik to Germany, and Van der Pluvinel to England, and they taught the next generation of riders, people like William Cavendish in England, Guernier in France, and so on. They practiced an art form and equestrian dance. They were obsessed with airs above the ground. The Duke of Newcastle stated in the 1600s that the whole object of the school horse was to get the horse upon the haunches. They became masters at collection. In Hans Hamler's book on the Spanish riding school, which chronicles the training with the SRS for some 400 years, he includes a very simple, elegant system of drawing which kind of shows the horse in a natural state, and then how it's gradually brought up in the front, but sitting under more and more until it can do even airs above the ground. One can see the progression of the lightening of the forehand and the straightening of the rear until the rider and horse can rear or jump off the hind legs in perfect control. In the 1800s, and this is an important part to remember. In the 1800s, a brilliant rider named Gustav Steinbeck trained horses in Germany. Now, you probably, if you're a reader, you know about his book, Gymnasium of the Horse. It's kind of the German riding Bible, except there's a problem. Not with his book, but how it was interpreted, and we'll get to that in a minute. In any case, Steinbeck trained horses in Germany in his famous book, The Gymnasium of the Horse, he wrote, "I have had horses whose front legs were completely worn out, but whom nature had endowed with strong hindquarters, and I have given them such complete freedom in the shoulder and such reliable gaits by bending their haunches that they could compete with the best and most valuable of their species. Under former riders, the strong hindquarters had merely helped push all the weight toward the forehand with great force, with such overloading, ruining the forelegs in a short time. By taking the load from the forehand, these horses gradually regained their natural elasticity and agility, and the higher elevation of the neck also gave them increased action of the shoulder." All right? As I said, something started happening in the 1800s, and which had never happened before. And one of the proofs we have of it is from a man named Baron Beale, and in his book he writes, "There is a sad state of affairs prevailing in most German riding schools, that the horses were overbent, their heads pulled down in an unnatural manner, and that one sought in vain for an example of the true art of riding." He continues, "I came to Vienna to watch the riders of the Spanish riding school, and I felt that the riding that was practiced there was practiced on different principles than any of the academies I had been to." 1830. also, it's about the same time, Louis Seeger is a famous German trainer. If you look at the thing, Seeger trained with Weyrother on the sort of an Austro-Hungarian school. So he's trained the classical way from the lineage of the Spanish riding school, student of Weyrother. Seeger at this time is getting very upset with what's going on in Germany, and he writes a book, a small book, kind of warning to younger German trainers. He's particularly going after the methods of Brochet in France. Brochet is very popular, with a lot of neck flexions and neck bending and so on. But he also says that where he's seeing it is he's seeing it in the German cavalry. And it's really upsetting him, and he's warning the riders that there's, quote, the only way out of this labyrinth that the art of riding has gotten into is to first ride the horse in a natural position in order to develop impulsion. Next, one should raise the head and neck to develop shoulder freedom and bending of the stifles. From this position, one could, so the horse comes closer to school, and the horse can be agile at the same time. So we have Seeger, we have these notations. Seeger sees it, Seeger's warning the riders about it, Baron Beal sees it, so on. So where is this coming from? Where is this neck, where is this low neck stuff coming from? Well, where it comes from is really, let's go back one second. Steinbeck, remember that we just talked about Steinbeck. Steinbeck's very aware that you want to get the horse onto the hindquarters, off of the forehand, by getting this lift, free the shoulders up, all right? Steinbeck is a student of Seeger's, and Steinbeck knows what Seeger's talking, he knows about the warning. But Steinbeck for some reason, feels that it's not going to be a real problem. Because military riders don't really get collection. They don't use it. They're never going to. All they try to do is ride the horse in the forehand. So what's the problem? No one's ever going to really do that if you're really interested in the art. Well, it becomes a really big problem. And this is one of the reasons it becomes a problem. So where this neck bending comes from, it comes from the particularly one very small subset of trainers, and that's at the cavalry school in Hanover, Germany. And what they do is in the German, the HDV12, the Army regulations, they talk about long and low. Now, in all fairness, a lot of the language, it's very vague, so it's hard to get really specific rules. It's quite vague, but what they talk about is riding the horse low and in a loose position. So much so that they underline the fact that they say, at the end of one of the regulations in bold letters, the only place is bold, that looseness, Gelassenheit of the horse is the basic requirement of dressage. Well, we have, interestingly enough, there's an eyewitness account of all this, and this guy named Gerd Stadelbaum Gordon, who was the last really representative of the school of Hanover, and he writes extensively and pretty accurately about how these horses were trained. So one of the phrases they use is that they want the horses to go low on command, and they talk about searching for troubles. So they want that horse down low. Now, also, one of the rules is that the horse must immediately comply to any regulating outside rein and lower its head. Now, I don't think it takes a lot of imagination to realize when you have a whole system of trainers, a whole military system of trainers, teaching that to put the horse's head down, and it must comply immediately from use of the outside rein. It doesn't take much to see how it got into looking like what Beal saw. That all these riders across Germany are now yanking their horses' heads down. Right? Now, some of the trainers there will say, "Oh, we always said to do it on a light rein." Well, you didn't really say to do it on a light rein. So, what was the point, though? What were they really trying to accomplish? Who came up with this idea in the first place? For what reason? All right. So, up until now, up till the 1800s, everything about dressage is that we lower the hindquarters of the horse. All right. So this is my horse. Very good. Anyway, but these things are the two fulcrums of the horse: the lumbosacral area and the withers of the horse. So they're the parts of the horse that we get better. Now, for what we said, 500 years, but maybe 2,000 years, what dressage was always about was about lowering the hindquarters. Right. So now, if this is the lumbosacral one, and I lower the hindquarters, I bring the hindquarters down and under, what happens to the forehead? Light comes up, right? they should put the horse, now we put the head and neck down, that's the hind end of the horse. What happens to the hind end? Comes up. It becomes the antithesis of collection. It doesn't make any sense. Why in the world would you do that? You know, that you're going to lighten the muscles of the rear end, you're going against spine grips, or you're going against everything. So what could be a possible reason to do it? All right? Now, this is where some of you are going to hear before, you shouldn't answer because you already know, but a lot of you will step right into this trap. All right? This is the ride. Okay? Now, I'm going to give you a little reins. Okay? That's the front over. All right? Now, in classical riding, when the horse engages haunches and sinks in the hindquarters, lifts the forehead up, does the rider go up or down? Up, right? Anybody have any problem with that? Right? The rider gets lifted. The rider feels lift in the back when the hindquarters engaging. The back contracts a little bit. You get leverage, like my cord has to be stiff. This cord isn't firm. It's not going to work. All right? Now, we come over to the School of Hanover, and they put the horse's head down. Yeah, good for a chair. So then we come to the School of Hanover, and Hanover puts the horse's head and neck down, like the hind end. Now, the point is, does the rider go up or down? Who said down? Huh? Down? Just look. That's the rider. This is everywhere I go with this demonstration, everyone does this. I'm showing you, just look what happens. The rider goes up or down. Up, up. And therein lies the seduction. See, that's how long and low come up. Because what they were saying, they thought, how can that be bad? If we put the horse's head down and the back comes up, we're getting lift in the back, you know, the horse is stretching out. How can it possibly be bad? But they didn't think of any of the unintended consequences. And that mainly, as soon as you do that, you disengage the hindquarters. None of the muscles of the psoas get developed to bring the horse into the lift. All right? And any of the stretching you do, this horse already come to you with 58% of the weight on the shoulders, and now you put the head down lower. Now you take it up to maybe, I don't know, 65, 70. Now, it's as Steinberg said, that about the horses that were sent to him that were lame because the person overused their forehand. That's what you were doing with this whole system. All right? So it was all about, really, about, you know, getting, one of the seductions was that there was lift in the back, so that it has some use. And so somebody might even say today, argue with me, well, doesn't it still have some use, you know, with the lift in the back? Well, it may be, but you're also, as I said, you've got to deal with those unintended consequences of the forehand, overburdening forehand. Now that's just one aspect. The next, probably really important aspect of it was that there was always a shadow side of that long and low. And it wasn't always about stretching. What it was about the rule that they said, they wrote in the HD 12 things, was that the horse must immediately comply to the regulation of the outside range. So what you did introduce in there in the beginning was manipulating the neck. Is that horse must put its head down when I say now. And then the riders got more and more into handwriting, and then the cop-out was that they said, oh, we're just lifting the back. We're getting stretching, we're getting lifting the back. But in the meantime, they're getting more and more stronger and stronger in the handwriting. Horses are now bending the necks. Beal saw it, Seeger saw it, everybody sees it, but nobody can do anything about it. Where does it get its power from? If it doesn't, if long and low doesn't really make any sense from terms of classical dictation, even in terms of just the anatomy of riding a horse, you're overburdening the forehand, you might be getting a little stretch in the back, but you're killing the front legs. And now you're allowing these riders to start pulling on the rein and bending the horse's head and neck from side to side. Well, what this really comes, you have to remember that in that 1800s, about in the same time frame that coincides with the Hanover's development or invention of long and low, comes the dissolution of the world's cavalries. Now, all of a sudden, all these cavalry people are out of job. What are they going to do? So there's actually a brilliant horseman in Germany, Gustav Rau, who is dubious in his personality and so on. He was a Nazi. But he was a brilliant marketer of horses. So Rau comes up with the idea that we need to now have people ride, just have civilians ride. We've got to repurpose from the cavalry, from the military horses, we got to repurpose them to sport horses. And so what they do is they invent, at that time, horse show. They start show jumping, they start 3-day eventing, and they start dressage. All right. So show jumping and 3-day eventing probably can be calibrated. Certainly jumping is fair enough. It doesn't matter which horse looks like. It's just can you get over the jumps? Or 3-day can get a little political. Dressage is very political and very subjective. All right. But anyway, this group of military men make a set of rules, and they start the dressage. In 1912, the FEI is formed. The first shows are, I think 1910 is the first Olympics. So 1913, Gustav Rau is appointed the General Secretary for the German Olympic Committee of Equestrian Sport. We all know now as DOKI. Right? In 1938, he becomes the Chief Equerry of Germany and the Master of the Horse. In 1926, the Germans were competing a little bit, and they got some stinging losses in 1928 in Versailles. And that's when Rau took over. Now Rau, he's a very interesting person, but Rau he's strictly another one of these military people. He gets people like to call him Dr. Rau and so on. He was never an intellectual. He got an honorary degree later in his life from the University of Bonn. He never really he was really a military man through and through. And what you're going to see now is the connection of this all military. In fact, no civilians were even allowed to compete in dressage until 1953. They had this completely sewn up. Right? So Rau decides anyway that what we have to do now, Germany's mess from 2 world wars, that we've got to do is sell the idea of riding to the general population. And it would really be better if every one of these people, when they take up riding, they take it up with a warm-blooded horse, preferably a German one. And so they start this great marketing scheme about training these horses. They also know that Rau knows, and it's really important, these horses have to win. We're going to put these new shows in, and these horses have to win. So one of the things they do is start competing. Now, Schwabel writes about how important the Hanover School was, because after these stinging losses in 28, Gustav Rau creates a new special stable in, of all places, where do you think he puts it? School of Hanover Cavalry. And who does he put in charge of it? He puts Otto Lorca in charge of it. Who's Otto Lorca? Another military guy. Learned with the Ulan Regiment, another military person. All right. So now, in 1936 at the Olympics, then, what's his name? Schwabel writes this whole thing. Look, we've proved that this German system and the School of Hanover system, based on Muskelassenheit, on the low, is so successful that we win all of the medals at the 1936 Olympics. All right? Now, that was that narrative. There was another narrative. All right? And that one was Gustav Rau, by the way, Gustav was the same person who tried to install Hanoverians and got rid of the Lipizzaners out of the Spanish riding school and put Hanoverians in. So he was ruthless in his marketing and very successful. So this is a quote from again Schwabel, the Hanover School of Riding. He says, "These principles of the classical art of riding that were put into practice at the Cavalry School of Hanover were so successful that Germany's riders from the Cavalry School won all 6 equestrian gold medals in the 1936 Olympics in Berlin, individual as well as team competitions. In reality, it wasn't the principle. In reality, it really wasn't the principles alone that were responsible for these results." Right? This is now from Belasik book, because Belasik was one of the competitors there at the very same games. So he writes, "After a long wait, the result of the main dressage event was announced. Kronos Germany first, absent Germany second, Nero Austria third, Greece Sweden fourth, and so on. I also noticed around me too a great deal of head shaking over this result, which was discussed everywhere, including the newspapers. The German judge was responsible for pushing me back into 3rd place because he not only put his own 3 countrymen first, second, and third, but placed me only 7th, unlike the other 4 judges, who had all put me somewhere in the first 4. In a long article on the decision, the German paper St. Georg reckoned that I was entitled to 3rd place even without the Austrian judge. Talking about this disappointment, blah, 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 it was not without interest that many years later, in 1943, the influential secretary of the German judge announced openly during the lunch at the jockey club in 1956 Olympics, being determined that the German rider should win. This meant marking up his countrymen and downgrading all the dangerous favorites. This cost me the silver medal, if not the gold. So Schwabel's idea, it also doesn't tell you that when they were forming, this group of military men were forming the new rules for the competitions, but they also had to do, they were very close friends with the head who was the president of the FBI. They were all buddies. Right? So what he was the person who was head of the FBI at the time was responsible and the utmost authority on all of the judges. All the judges had to answer to him. From the beginning, Dressage was always just plagued with this crooked judgment. And in this case, we saw that when they started to want to make German horses really popular, they have to win at the competitions. How are you going to make them win at the competitions? You better be able to control the judging, and they could. They could control the judging. They controlled the judging, and judging was such a problem that in 1952, finally the IOC decides that's enough. Dressage is out. They're going to kick Dressage out of the Olympics because it's just too political, and we can't have it anymore. Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands steps in, and he says, no, I think we can fix it, so we allow it to be in. But I think anyone can make a really strong case that nothing has changed, right? That the marketing for the German horses is still stronger than it ever was, and now we even have some peer-reviewed studies that prove them, that basically in all competitions, first off, all you have to do is just go look, and then look at the roster of the recent competitions at a high level, and find the horse that's not a warm up. Very recently, the Spaniards have made a little bit of mid-work, but forever, it's been all warm ups. That's the only horses that are allowed to compete. Not only that, as I said, there have been some peer-reviewed studies now that have proven that the horses, the warm-blood horses, have a 2.5% advantage over all other horses in competition. Now, you could think, that's 2.5, that's not much. Right? It's not much. It's only 3% in Las Vegas for all the machines that makes the difference between whether Las Vegas wins all the time or whether you and I have a chance. That's all it takes to tip the odds that big. So 2.5 is a lot. And really what it does is it guarantees that warm-blood horses win all the time. Now, I didn't do this just to tell you, what was. Now, let's go back. So the long and low business started, and the deeper started. Where did it get its power from? It didn't get its power from that it was an invention of some new magic kind of riding that was actually useful for the horse. Where it got its power from was that it was inextricably linked to winning at competitions. That you had to do the system because it went from all the way up the line, from School of Hanover, then Otto Lorke when he got a hold of the school against School of Hanover, but now he's creating a German machine to make more and more of these horses to win at competitions. And it's the same kind of riding. Went on then to Uwe Schulten-Baumer, another military man who trains Isabel Worth and who trained Nicole Uphoff. We don't, everybody's just looking the other way on this long and low speed riding until Rembrandt comes along, and then they see, there are some films of this horse, and she's riding this horse cranked in for 45 minutes. Now, in the press, she says all the time, no, I only did it, and even her coach, Harry Boldus, renowned German trainer, says, she only did it for a second. The horse was going to shy. There was some barriers there. She did it for a second. In fact, there was an American, Beth Balmer, who went there and filmed this. Now, I've talked to Beth, and Beth said she didn't go there really to expose anyone. She went there just to take a film to see what these European riders were doing. But by filming it, and she got permission from the operators of Aachen to be able to do this. In her filming, she has it there of Nicole Uphoff for like 40 minutes going around with this horse's head cranked to the side. Not only that, she films around another horse. So now she can't deny it, and it becomes the St. Georg magazine in Germany. It's pointing pictures of it. There's lawsuits back and forth, and it's beginning to explode. Now, it goes there. The next big proponent of it is Isabel Worth, who everybody thinks is this genius. There's films of Isabel Worth doing exactly the same thing. And why? Because they both learned from the same man. Uwe Schulten-Baumer, again, was not a dressage rider, was a military rider, comes straight up the German pipeline. It's the same thing. They just kept holding on to this system. Get the submission of these horses first. Don't worry about the hind end. The judges don't know anymore. Don't care about collection. All we're going to work on this end. Get the freedom of the shoulders. So Isabel Worth came along. From Isabel Worth, then goes right into Enki von Drusen. Now the Dutch are watching all this and thinking like, Germans are winning everything they can win. Why don't we copy it? They copy it, and even in a probably worse way. She's even more brutal than ever. Right? the judges now, the judges like, when you talk to judges, and they'll like to say, I can only judge what was in front of me at that time. And when they rode into the arena, they picked the horse's head up. It's like, that is bull, right? Because what you could have easily seen was those horses, and you can easily see it now by just going back and looking at those horses never engaged. Rembrandt did a Piaf that stayed flat like this. All he did was Passage on the spot, Piaf so far, never sat. And every one of those horses is the same thing. They were losing the ability to collect because they were just concentrating on putting the horse's head down. They were just doing what the Calvin School of Hanover said. They were just completing that song. Now, the judges, we're not complicit in that. You're not complicit in that? Between those three riders, the judges, the international FEI judges, have awarded over 100 medals for those three riders alone, and almost all of them were gold. Now, what are you going to tell young people coming up that are learning to be training, and they watch that and tell them, that's no good? What are you kidding me? They're going to follow that. They're the ones who win all the prizes. They do everything. So, hence the whole system keeps on going. But the whole thing is based on some really shoddy principles in the beginning, and it's this, complete battle between the classic principles and then this new invention of long and low. And, in hindsight, I wish, like Steinbeck, Steinbeck is, he's still the biggest hero in Germany, and they'll always, if you pin him down on this German, they'll always go back and tell you about Steinpress, and then you quote Steinpress. Of course, nobody argues with Steinpress. He's right. He was good, but I wish he would have been a little more persistent about, stepping up and saying, this stuff's got to stop. But he just thought it would just, I think, I thought he thought it was going to go away or whatever. But it didn't go away, and now it's more prevalent in riding, and it has, so what does it have to do with the simple framework of dressage? That it has everything to do with it because so many people coming up now in the judges' systems and learning and in lessons, look, the first thing you do is put your horse's head down. Nobody told. Where did it come from? They don't know. The people who teach it don't know where it came from. What is it useful for? They don't know. They tell you the stretching of the back. But it has nothing to do with collection. You do that for a couple of years, the horses are unable to come under the haunches. They become stiffer and stiffer and stiffer in the back, more and more frozen in the neck. Again, the complete antithesis to collection and to classical dressage. But that was the principle. So this has been always a kind of this constant fight now in modern times between if you're talking about a framework for dressage or a kind of training of dressage, what system are you going to use? Right? If you're going to use the system of this long and low system, right, then it seems to me you better understand where it came from, and you better understand what it's really doing. Because it's, in my point of view, it's really causing a lot of harm in teaching riders how to collect. And now the more you put young judges and you teach them, they can't even recognize horses. Now, listen to the commentators on this as they'll watch these horses go in these brilliant 9, or 10. The horse's piaffe is not sitting. They're stepping on themselves. They're balancing. They're every kind of flaw you can imagine that they can't collect. And yet, it's just like there's blinders on. No one can see anymore what classical dressage is or what these principles are based on. So, anyway, what you have to keep in mind is in the training of your horses or in the riding of your horses, what are you going to do? Do you want to stretch it out for a moment or so, do a little bit of yoga before you ride? I don't think that necessarily is going to hurt anything. But if you have a horse that's a little too heavy on the forehand, yeah, go ahead and try to pick it up. See what happens. Over the course of years of my training, this long and low system I just found, it's like maybe you're a professional, you could pull it off a little bit, but the average rider can't do this. Most horses learn to go down. They love it. They don't come back up. You have to have a back of steel. You've got to have sharp bridle. You've got to have big spurs. They're going to love that on the forehand. So, one of the things I was thinking when I was writing, I was thinking, a foal is born. It still needs to nurse, all right. It can't even survive without nursing on its mother's milk. All of us have seen young horses. That young foal is trying to eat grass, like at day 3. It's got its head down, long and low, and it's eating grass. It's trying to eat grain on the floor, whatever. You're raising your horses, 2 years old, you have them out in the paddock. How many times have you gone out there and you have to fix the bottom board in the fence because that horse is like full grown and gets its neck down? It not only gets its neck down, it twists its head. And so you can get under there, get one little dandelion on the other side of that fence, right? Who in their right mind thought that the horse needed more of that? Why? They're master. By the time you get the horse at 3 years old, it is a complete master and long and low. I don't think it needs even one more ounce of long and low. What it means is now work on that end. Start at the beginning of that end. Get the neck out of the balancing picture, get the neck up, and listen to Steinbeck, and then think, okay, now let's do a systematic set of exercises that will begin to develop the hindquarters of the horse, get him off the forehead, relieve some weight. It's already come to you with 58% of the weight on the shoulders. Let's relieve the front end a little bit, not feed up the front end more, so we make the horse lame and have every kind of front end problems. All right, we can make the horse stay sounder, and we can get a little bit of the weight off of the front legs. And you can do it, just as I reckon all these people knew about it before.